Yep, recording.
All right, hello all. Thanks for joining. My name is Brian Waters. I'm account executive here at Bales and Associates. For those of you that aren't familiar with Bales, I'd like to just give you a little rundown. We have been in the Infor ecosystem for over 26 years. We are entirely Infor focused. We do nothing but Infor implementations, upgrades, and managed services. We support all aspects of the technology, including S3, Landmark, and Cloud Suite, including HCM, finance, and supply chain. In fact, we have been recognized and given partner awards in 8 out of the last 10 years. Our consultants bring 15 plus years of consulting experience in this space and the equivalent in professional experience. Some are former benefit managers, compensation managers, directors of supply chain, as well as former controllers and CFOs. Exciting news for the Infor community. Early this year, Bales became part of Nordic, an industry-leading healthcare consulting firm. Bales will continue to operate as a wholly owned subsidiary and continue to be led by Jamie Bales. Nordic will provide us with resources to fund our growth, expand our business, and support our customers more effectively. For healthcare customers, it allows us to bring together the Nordic's capabilities in the EHR space to provide a more holistic solution, including specific expertise in EHR and ERP integration. This combination will offer a best practice model to reduce implementation risks and leveraging the data from both systems to drive insights and outcomes. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mona Pollard, part of our HCM practice, and Niki Kimball, our HCM practice manager. As far as this disclaimer, we don't really have to go through that. So Mona, if you want to jump in.
Well, good, thank you. I am Mona Pollard, HCM practice, one of the HCM practice lead, and today we will talk about remote workers and setting and how will you set that information up in your system, whether it's S3, GHR, or a combination of S3 and GHR. A remote worker or working remotely is used basically to describe employees who are not located at the facility, and how do you want those taxes to be paid. Basically, the steps that you're going to need is making sure that you register with the state to where the taxes are be paid, your company setup, your tax authorities, your state and local, setting up your deductions, your remote field flags, and your making sure that the physical address of whether taxes should be set up or is set up correctly, and it is a valid address, and then assign taxes. BSI is the primary tax authority that we use to set up. So in BSI, the tax authority codes are listed and set up. And it tells the tables, the BSI tables, how to calculate the taxes. And the tax authority must be defined for federal taxes and for each of the states and the localities for which the payroll will calculate the taxes. And then only one tax authority should be created for each of your tax jurisdictions. And we will go through each of those setup. So starting with S3. In your S3, you're going to set up your company setup. You're going to review the company setup because it should already be set up. You're going to review the tax field to verify which address should be used, whether it's your home address or your supplemental for the taxes. Next, based on that employee's address, you want to, if you already know what it is, you have to set up the tax authority on the PRO6. If you know which local tax authorities will need to be added, you can add them there. But if you don't know it, when you run your PR 113, you should receive the error messages of which BSI codes are missing for that particular employee.
Can you go back to the previous, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, this is Joanne. The previous one, you said something about HR 00 and the home address or supplemental. what are you looking at in there?
So on the tax tab, on
Okay.
HR 00 in the employee tax address field, if you use 1, it's using the home address as the tax address. So you want to make sure that that is done. If it is 2, which is your supplemental address, which means that that's the address that is being used. So it's just identifying which address on HR 11 is being used for taxes.
Okay, I think we are well, I don't know what's on our HR 00 because we don't actually set it up. That's a HR screen, but we tax at the work location. So anyways, yeah. I have to go look at that. Thanks.
You're welcome. We talked about the PR 206, and then after you do that, what you do want to do is set up your deduction codes for each of the tax for that particular state and for any local taxes that you set up. But you also want to make sure that you assign the right tax category and the correct tax authority.
I just looked on our HR 00 and it does say 1.
Okay, so that means that you are using the home address for taxes.
It says home/HR 11 address.
Correct. It's the HRE, it's the address, the employee's address on the HR 11. That is the address that is being used to calculate taxes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. So we have our deduction, and once you set up your deduction, making sure that it has the right tax category and tax authority, and you set it up, that's all you're really doing here. The next field that is very important is making sure that on the employee tab, the HR 11, on the tax tab, that the remote flag is flipped for any employee that is going to be remote, so that the system knows to make sure to use the employee's home address or supplemental based on whatever you have on the HR 00 is being used.
Okay, so that's what we have had this, and that does work, the remote flag of 1. It seems to be working okay for full remote employees.
Yes.
For the remote flag, that's for anybody who is remote, not working at the location. It's not just for someone who may not be working in the same state that the company is in, correct?
Correct.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, as long as you want their that remote flag, as long as you want their taxes to be based off of their home address, that is what that is driving. Any other questions?
Probably can't do this, but so that works for full remote. Is there something in the system for partial where people work half and half?
No. It's
No.
either you're remote or you're not remote.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
You're welcome. So once that flag is, somebody speaking?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So if they're in the same state, but we're considering them remote because they're working out of the home office, they would be flagged as yes, remote, or does it really depend on if out of their state?
You're breaking up and I didn't catch all of that.
And if you want to put it in the chat, we can, I can look at it better there. But I think what he was asking if it was just in state or out of state. It doesn't matter. That remote flag will look at the home address, whether they're in state or out of state.
Correct. And it depends on what state you're in, because if you're in a state like Pennsylvania, that even though you're in state, that address is important because it determines which local taxes are assigned. I hope that answered your question. And next up, we have the HR 11. And this is basically making sure that the address, the home address is set up for the employee, because this is where the taxes is going to be. And then if they want a mail-in address that's separate from their home, you can put that in the supplemental address.
What did you say about the supplemental again?
If they have an address that
Mhm.
they want, they don't want to use their physical address as their mailing address, you can use the supplemental as long as the supplemental is where you're using to do all your mailing.
Okay.
And the final thing that you would do once you set up everything in S3 is actually assign the taxes. So you will set your PR 113 up, you will run it, and then you will work on, you will review the report and then the error report. Here's an example below here is where the error report, and what I was saying is if something is missing, it would actually give you what the BSI code is and what tax authority is missing so that you know which codes and what tax authority that needs to be set up. And then you go back and you create that deduction, that tax authority if it's not set up, or maybe you just forgot to set the deduction up. So then you would just go back and set up the deduction. Questions? And that is all that it takes for S3. If you're currently using GHR, but with S3 payroll, you will set up on the employee record at a glance. You will want to make sure that the remote flag, working remotely, is checked. That is the first thing.
And that does flow over to the S3 HR 11, correct?
Correct. It will flow over.
Thank you.
Along with making sure that the address is set up, that it is set up, I live at this address, because that is your payroll address. As long as this field is checked, that is the address, that will be used to calculate taxes. And this will flow over to S3 also. And this is your S3 interface. It will create it, the IP, the cross reference, and then it goes to your HT 111, and then you use the 101 or the LT 111 to update the information in S3. And once that information, the employee's information is in S3, you will still follow the S3 steps to set up the codes, the PR06, the PR05, and running your PR 113 to make sure that it got assigned. Next up, we have GHR payroll setup. Under your as your payroll administrator, under your payroll configuration, what you will want to do is it's the same as your S3 HR00, but here it's just named a little differently. You want to make sure that address line 1 is for delivery and address line 2 is for location, or vice versa, so you know which address is going to be used for your taxes. Tax authority setup in GHR payroll, all of your federal and state tax authorities are included in your delivered content. So you don't have to set those up. The only ones that you have to set up are your local tax authorities. So those are the only ones that you will need to find the code for and actually go through the process and setting it up. But N4 delivers all federal and state now.
Hello, it's Joanne. When you're saying to set up the locals, you're saying for payroll to set up the local, but this is for GHR payroll, not S3 payroll, correct?
Correct. Even in S3, somebody would have to set up the PRO6 and the PRO5. Whoever's responsible for setting those screens up, they will have to set it up. In GHR, this is equivalent to your PRO6.
Okay, you're just reviewing the GHR side now. Okay.
So is GHR the same thing as version 11?
Yes.
All right. Andrea Alameda, heads up.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Your deduction setup is also listed under your payroll administrator. And you go in and you create your deduction, and then you assign your taxes. Having the right tax authority and having the correct tax authority category set up is important. It's the same things that you're making sure that is set up in S3 that you're kind of used to. You're going to make sure that they're set up here also. Next, you're going to make sure on the employee record, on the resource record, that the working remotely field is checked for that particular employee. Address, I live at this address, is checked. And then in GHR payroll, you have the assigned taxes, which is equivalent to your PR 113, but with a lot less fields. And you can run it based on payment schedules, eligibility group, and then you submit it and you get a error report, just like you got in S3, that tells you what is missing, if anything is missing, or any errors. Questions?
Nope, there's nothing in the chat, but if anybody has any questions and you want to put them there, I'll make sure Mona answers them.
And that's basically your complete setup in S3, GHR, or S3 and GHR. So just making sure you register with the state, you make sure you review your company setup, you make sure that you have the right information on the address, the remote flag, your tax authorities, and your deduction codes are set up. And those are your most important things that you would need. Questions, concerns?
We do have a question. For the S3 setup, how can I find out if an employee that is set with a remote flag and moves to another state? So that would
mean that you would still need to their address on the HR 11. You would need to review their address, and then you would need to review that HR 11 flag. The tax tab to see if that remote field is checked. And then the other question is, are you registered in the state that that employee has moved to pay taxes? Because if you're not registered with that state, you don't want to take those taxes.
Is there an easier way? It sounds like they have quite a few employees, 22,000 employees. Is there an easier way to find these employees? I mean, the only thing I can think of is an audit report that would list everybody who has a remote flag,
Correct.
but that wouldn't tell them if they move to another state. You would probably want a
Use the
report.
remote, yeah, I would say you would use the remote flag and the address, and that'll let you know what state they're in now.
Yeah. Kellie,
But
did you have?
also, yeah, if they're going to be doing that, there's a good chance they used a personal action to do that or some kind of action.
Right.
So you just look at the folks that have that action as part of the query and see if they've moved to a old and new. You know what I mean? If they don't
Yeah.
equal,
Yeah,
then
or
put
the
'em on the
HR
report.
105 could you do that for addresses to see who's changed, but you'd have to have it for the remote flag and any new addresses.
Correct.
So it says payroll won't have access to the PA transactions. Then you'll have to work, I guess, with your HRIS team to get a report made with this data in it. Yep. Or you can set up a query. Exactly. Great.
Any more questions?
I
Real
don't
quick,
see
I
any out
did
there.
have somebody ask me if the slide deck and presentation would be available, and I will be sending that out to the registrants for this session. If you aren't registered and you do want a copy, if you could just send me an email at molly.velasco@balesllc.com. I put that information in the chat, and then I'll be sure to include you when I send out the recording.
Oh, there's one. Do you have to set up PRO3 required deductions to have local taxes set up automatically?
No.
No, BSI does that.
Yes.
With tax locator from BSI.
Correct.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. That was the beauty of version 8,
Yeah.
the location code. We didn't
And
have
that's
to use the PRO3 anymore. It made me happy.
that's also available in GHR payroll, correct? The same functionality?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is. And it works beautifully.
You get even more errors.
Any other questions out there? Alrighty. I think you can go to the next slide.
Well, Mona, Niki, and Kellie, thank you very much for that presentation for all who joined today. As you can see, we still have 3 more sessions in July for Informative Fridays. So if you're interested, please reach out to Molly and register, and we will touch base with you with the information how to register. Is there one more slide there? And as a parting thought, if you have any questions that maybe later on, next week you're thinking, you can reach out and we can give you a half-hour free consulting time. This happens for all our Informative Fridays. After those sessions, if you've seen something or you got some questions or you'd like to touch base or reach out to one of our consultants, we will provide that half hour to you. Just please reach out to us through billsllc.com or Molly's email address, and we'll be in touch. So with that, that's today's presentation. Thank you all again, and we will be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.